The moment the 12-year-old boy rose from his seat, the atmosphere inside the courtroom shifted, as if someone had cracked the silence with a blade. "Let my mother go, and I'll put you back on your feet." His voice was steady, too steady for a child, and the words shot across the room like a spark thrown into dry grass. Judge William Carter, paralyzed for 8 years after a violent car accident, froze mid-page and slowly lifted his eyes, disbelief tightening his jaw. Laughter, sharp and unkind, burst like fireworks all around the chamber. Prosecutors exchanged mocking smirks, spectators muttered their ridicule, and reporters leaned toward one another, convinced they were witnessing a circus rather than a trial. "Poor kids," someone whispered. "Poverty can make children delusional." But Kevin Washington didn't flinch. His mother, Deborah, a janitor who had cleaned this courthouse for nearly a decade and a half, was accused of stealing $50,000 from an administrative safe, an accusation so conveniently crafted that the mere fact she was poor, black, and invisible in the eyes of the system was treated as evidence of guilt. Kevin wasn't there as a frightened child pleading for mercy. He stood like someone far older than his years, someone who had watched the world show its teeth too many times to be intimidated by it. "I know who took the money and I can prove it." More laughter, more disbelief. But two people stopped laughing. Thomas Mitchell, the judge's assistant, whose fingers tightened around the table's edge, and Kevin himself, who scanned every face with the precision of a seasoned observer. What no one realized was that Kevin had spent the last 6 months gathering information, paying attention to details adults assumed children never noticed. While he was dismissed as a harmless kid, he became a silent recorder of secrets, conversations, patterns, and lies. Hidden in his school backpack was a small digital recorder containing hours of whispered prejudice and corruption. He glanced at Mitchell's new Rolex, remembered the BMW parked outside, and cataloged all the inconsistencies he'd quietly pieced together. When the prosecutor made a blatantly racist comment, Kevin absorbed it with the familiar sting of someone who had spent years watching his mother endure humiliation she never deserved. Nobody saw the trap closing, nobody except the boy who had said it. And just when the courtroom tried to drown him out again, a voice from the back interrupted the chaos. Patricia Williams, a nationally renowned civil rights attorney, strode forward with documents authorizing federal review. She announced she was there to represent the Washington family. Hours earlier, Kevin and Patricia had never met in person, but weeks before, the boy had called her armed with observations and suspicions so sharp that she immediately sensed something enormous was buried beneath the surface. Now she stood between Kevin and the system, prepared to crush him. When she revealed financial records showing Mitchell had recently purchased a $300,000 home in cash, panic cracked across his face like shattering porcelain. And when she cited federal authority to reopen the case, the room finally began to understand that the child they had mocked was far more dangerous to their comfort than they ever imagined. Kevin stepped forward with the calmness of someone who had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times in his mind. Gone was the timid boy the courtroom expected to see. In his place stood a strategist who had turned invisibility into a weapon. He outlined how he'd mapped the blind spots in the courthouse security cameras, noting movements others overlooked. He revealed that only 3 people had the safe's access code: his mother, Judge Carter, and Thomas Mitchell. Then he played footage of Mitchell entering the building late at night, well after closing hours. Mitchell's face drained of color as federal agents, already notified by Patricia, stepped into the courtroom and escorted him out. The silence that followed was unlike the earlier hush. This one was heavy, crushing, and full of realization. But Kevin wasn't finished. He pulled an old laptop from his backpack, connected it to the sound system, and explained that during the past 6 months, he had recorded everything, every racist remark, every unethical comment, every moment of corruption spoken by people who believed no one beneath them would ever dare to keep receipts. The speakers crackled, then released the damning audio. The prosecutor joking about black defendants, Carter laughing about not needing evidence when the accused was a black woman, and recorded words dripping with arrogance and prejudice. Gas flooded the room. Reporters scrambled. The judge's face twisted as if he were being unmasked in slow motion and knew there was no way to stop it. Patricia announced that the recordings had already been sent to national agencies, oversight boards, and the press. The courtroom, once so quick to mock Kevin, now stared at him with a mixture of awe and dread. Some looked ashamed, others simply frightened by how thoroughly a child had dismantled their illusions of righteousness. But the strangest moment came when Judge Carter's hands trembled, not with anger, but with sensation. For the first time in 8 years, he felt something in his legs. A tingling spread through them, then pressure, then movement. The impossible began to happen before everyone's eyes. Doctors would later call it a rare psychosomatic reversal triggered by catastrophic emotional shock. Others called it irony, pushed by fate. Carter, caught in the unraveling of his own cruelty, stood on legs that had been useless for nearly a decade. But it was no triumph. It was exposure. His long-awaited miracle arrived at the exact moment his reputation, authority, and dignity dissolved. Kevin had kept his vow. He had made the judge walk again. Just not in the way anyone expected. As Carter took shaky, humiliating steps before the cameras, Kevin's expression remained calm, almost solemn, as if he understood that justice often demands sacrifice, not from the oppressed, but from the lies that protect the powerful. He had proven what most adults refuse to believe, that age does not limit intelligence, that silence should not be mistaken for weakness, and that underestimating those who observe quietly can cost the corrupt everything. 6 months later, the aftermath of Kevin's battle echoed throughout the city as a reminder that truth, when wielded with precision, can rewrite entire systems. Judge Carter resigned the day after the recordings leaked nationwide. His brief, miraculous recovery became a bitter symbol of poetic justice. He could walk again, but nowhere with dignity. No law firm would hire him, no community respected him, and his face became a national example of judicial corruption, exposed by the very child he once dismissed. Thomas Mitchell, unmasked as the true thief, was sentenced to prison for embezzlement and money laundering, his lavish lifestyle stripped away. His marriage collapsed, his assets were seized, and he entered prison branded as a man who framed an innocent woman, a reputation that made survival behind bars far more difficult. Prosecutor Davidson lost his law license after his racist remarks circulated across every major news outlet. He moved to another state, selling insurance to avoid questions about his fall from grace. Meanwhile, the Washington family rose from the ashes of injustice. Deborah, once treated as invisible, became an emblem of resilience. The city hired her as an administrative supervisor in the renovated courthouse, a role that restored not just her career, but her dignity. Kevin's story spread across the country, inspiring documentaries, interviews, and school programs about civil rights and the power of speaking truth to power. Universities offered him scholarships years before he would even apply.